Tiny man, tiny performance. My wife sneered at our dinner party, pinching her fingers together as her colleagues roared with laughter. I smiled and served dessert while dying inside. 1 week later, I found her steamy text to her coworker. The look on her face when I placed her packed bags by the door? Priceless. She screamed I'd never find anyone better. Now she watches from across the restaurant as my new girlfriend can't keep her hands off me. My name is Kevin Crawford. I'm 38, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had a decent marriage. Irene and I had been together for 9 years, with a nice colonial in Boston suburbs and promising careers. It all fell apart on a Friday in October. Irene had insisted we host dinner for her marketing firm colleagues. It's important, Kevin. These connections matter. I spent the entire day preparing, cleaning, buying expensive wine, and cooking her favorite recipes. By evening, everything was perfect. Wedding china gleaming, candles lit, jazz playing softly. 5 couples arrived, all designer-clad with practice smiles. I played the dutiful host while Irene worked the room, showing off our renovated kitchen. For a while, things went smoothly. After dinner, as I served dessert, the conversation shifted to relationships. Irene, on her 4th glass of wine, turned to me with a cold smile. When I first met Kevin, I thought he'd be this impressive catch, confident, commanding, impressive in all areas. She emphasized the last words with a theatrical wink. Her colleague Mark asked, "And he's not?" Irene held up her hand, pinching her thumb and index finger together with barely space between them. Let's just say some things don't measure up to expectations. The room erupted in uncomfortable laughter. I stood frozen, dessert plates in hand, face burning. It's like being married to a teenager, she continued. Quick to start, quicker to finish, if you know what I mean. Someone tried changing the subject, but Irene wasn't finished. We all have our burdens to bear. Mine's just smaller than most. She raised her glass in a mocking toast, and others reluctantly joined, the atmosphere thick with embarrassment. I somehow made it through the evening. Smiled. Clear plates. Refilled glasses. Inside, something fundamental was shifting. After everyone left, Irene acted like nothing happened. When I confronted her, she rolled her eyes. "Oh, lighten up, Kevin. It was just a joke. You're being too sensitive." That night, as she slept, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, her words on repeat in my mind. The public humiliation made it impossible to ignore anymore. This dinner party would be the first domino in a chain of revelations about the woman I'd married. The morning after the dinner party, I woke before Irene. My sleep had been fitful, fragments of the previous night playing on repeat in my mind. I slipped out of bed, made coffee, and sat at our kitchen island, watching sunlight filter through the blinds. As I sat there, memories flooded back, not just from last night, but from throughout our 9 years together. It was like seeing our relationship through a new lens, one that brought every slight, every dismissive comment, every public humiliation into sharp focus. Early in our relationship, Irene's comments had been subtle, often disguised as helpful suggestions. "Maybe you should wear shoes with thicker soles when we meet my family," she'd say. "It might help you look more substantial." I'd laughed it off, thinking she was being practical. Then came the bedroom critiques. What started as gentle guidance quickly morphed into something more cutting. "Is that it?" she'd ask, expression flat. Or worse, she'd sigh and turn away. "Don't worry about it. I'm used to disappointment." 3 years ago, I'd received a significant promotion at work. I'd rushed home with a bottle of champagne, eager to celebrate with my wife. Instead of congratulations, Irene had looked up briefly from her laptop and said, "That's nice. I guess they must not have had many options this year." Then she'd launched into a 40-minute monologue about her own work accomplishments while the champagne warmed on the counter, unopened. Family gatherings were minefields. Irene would introduce me to relatives with her hand resting on my shoulder. "This is my husband, Kevin. He's not what I pictured when I dreamed about marriage, but we make do, don't we, honey?" All while wearing that perfect smile that made everyone think she was just being playfully affectionate. When shopping for clothes, she'd hold up smaller sizes. "Maybe someday, right?" In front of store associates. If I tried something I liked, she'd frown slightly. "It's fine if that's what you want, but it doesn't really do anything for your figure." Even my hobbies weren't safe. I'd started taking guitar lessons 2 years ago, something I'd always wanted to do. After my third lesson, I overheard Irene on the phone with her sister. It's cute. His fingers are too small to reach some chords properly, but he tries so hard. I stopped playing after a month. The most consistent pattern was how she'd build me up in private just enough to tear me down in public. She'd say I looked handsome as we got ready for an event, only to later tell everyone about how she had to help me coordinate my outfit because I dressed like a colorblind teenager. As I sat in our kitchen, these memories converged into a devastating realization. This wasn't love. This was a systematic campaign to diminish me while maintaining the facade of a perfect marriage. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through Irene's Instagram. There it was, photos from last night's dinner. Amazing evening with amazing friends and my amazing husband who made it all happen. The comments were filled with heart emojis and couple goals responses. The contrast between her online portrayal of our marriage and the reality made me physically ill. I was living in two different relationships. The public one she crafted for social media, and the private one where I was constantly reminded I wasn't enough. As morning light filled our kitchen, I realized with startling clarity, this was emotional abuse, and it had been happening for years. 3 days after the dinner party, I was still processing my revelation about our marriage when opportunity knocked. Irene had gone for her Saturday morning yoga class, a 90-minute session followed by what she called essential networking at the juice bar next door. Translation: at least 3 hours of freedom. I wasn't proud of what I was about to do, but something deep in my gut was screaming that there was more to uncover. For years, I'd respected her privacy completely. Never checked her phone, never questioned her late client meetings. Trust had been my religion, even when I was the only true believer. I poured another coffee and stared at her iPad on the kitchen counter. She'd left it charging, probably assuming I'd be out running errands as I usually did on Saturday mornings. Her personal email was likely still logged in. With trembling hands, I picked up the device. The screen lit up, displaying her email inbox. My chest tightened as I scrolled through message after message from someone named JM, with subjects like, missing you, and Tuesday confirmed. I clicked on the most recent one, dated yesterday. Can't wait for Tuesday. The Harborview Hotel, same room, 2 to 5 p.m. I've already made an excuse to my team. Tell Kevin you have that client dinner. Miss feeling you against me. Jay. The room spun around me. I opened another message, this one with photo attachments showing Irene and a man I recognized as James Maxwell, her firm's creative director. The photos weren't explicit, but the intimacy was unmistakable, his arm around her waist, her looking up at him adoringly in a way she hadn't looked at me in years. I checked the timestamp on the first email. 7 months ago. This wasn't a one-time mistake or a recent development. This was a calculated, ongoing affair happening right under my nose. With mechanical precision, I took screenshots of key messages, sending them to my own email. Then I checked her calendar. There it was, Tuesday afternoon blocked off as client presentation prep. A lie already in place. Next, I examined our credit card statements online. Charges for restaurants I'd never been to on dates we'd supposedly shared. A weekend professional development conference that coincided with hotel charges in a coastal town 2 hours away. The evidence mounted with each click, each search. The affair had been going on for over half a year with her colleague, the same man who'd sat at our dinner table, witnessing my humiliation while sleeping with my wife. What cut deepest wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that while she was openly mocking me to others, she was actively seeking fulfillment elsewhere instead of addressing issues in our marriage. I wasn't even worth the effort of a conversation. My hand stopped shaking. The initial shock gave way to something colder, more focused. I took a deep breath and continued gathering evidence, creating a folder in my email labeled Next Steps. By the time I heard Irene's key in the lock, I was sitting calmly at the kitchen counter, iPad back in its original position, my face a careful mask of normalcy. "You're still home?" she asked, surprised to find me there. "Just finishing some work," I replied, watching her with new eyes. "How was yoga?" "Great," she said, not meeting my gaze as she set down her bag. "Really centering." I nodded, wondering if she'd been with him instead of at yoga, wondering how many other lies I'd swallowed whole over the years. "I'm thinking of grilling tonight," I said casually. "That salmon you like." She smiled, relieved I wasn't asking questions. "Sounds perfect." In a way, it was the perfect beginning to the end. For the next 2 days, I lived a double life. On the surface, I was the same accommodating husband Irene had grown accustomed to controlling. I made breakfast, asked about her day, watched her shows without complaint. Meanwhile, beneath this calculated normalcy, I was orchestrating my exit with military precision. Monday morning, while Irene was in the shower, I called my oldest friend Mark. "I need a place to stay," I explained quietly. "Just for a couple weeks until I figure things out." "Everything okay?" he asked, concern evident. "Not really. I'll explain when I see you. Spare room's yours, man." No questions asked. Next came the lawyer, a woman my colleague had used during his divorce last year. I scheduled an appointment for Wednesday morning, requesting the earliest slot available. During my lunch break, I opened a new bank account at a different institution than the one Irene and I shared. I transferred half of our savings, an amount that seemed fair given our equal contributions to the household. I wasn't looking to punish her financially. I just needed to protect myself. That evening, I cataloged what was truly mine: clothes, personal items, a few family heirlooms, my grandfather's watch. Everything else, the furniture, the artwork we'd collected, the house itself, could be sorted during the divorce proceedings. Material possessions suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the recovery of my self-respect. Tuesday was the hardest part, maintaining normalcy while knowing what was happening. Irene left for work wearing an outfit I'd never seen before, her hair and makeup more elaborate than usual for a regular office day. "Big client presentation," she explained, kissing my cheek hastily. "Don't wait up. We'll probably do dinner after to celebrate." "Good luck," I said, the words ashen in my mouth. While she was gone, I packed 2 suitcases with essentials and loaded them into my car trunk during my lunch break, parking it down the street afterward so she wouldn't notice if she came home unexpectedly. At work, I requested Thursday and Friday off for personal reasons. My boss, noting my perfect attendance record, approved it without question. That night, Irene returned home after 9, slightly disheveled and smelling of unfamiliar cologne. She claimed the presentation had gone well, describing fictional client reactions in elaborate detail. I nodded and smiled, playing the role of supportive husband one last time. As she showered, I checked her location history on our shared account, the Harborview Hotel, exactly as the email had specified. The final confirmation of what I already knew. "You seem quiet," she said later, as we got ready for bed. "Just tired. Big project, deadline tomorrow." She nodded, already scrolling through her phone. "Don't forget we have dinner with the Johnsons on Saturday." "I won't," I lied, knowing I'd be gone before then. As she fell asleep beside me, I lay awake, studying her face in the dim light. This woman who had once been the center of my world now felt like a stranger, beautiful still, but hollow where her heart should be. I felt an unexpected wave of pity. Whatever she was searching for, she hadn't found it with James, or she wouldn't need the validation of controlling me. Tomorrow, I would reclaim my life. Tonight, I silently said goodbye to the man I'd been, the one who had allowed himself to be diminished for the sake of a marriage that existed only in his imagination. Wednesday evening arrived with an air of finality. My meeting with the lawyer had gone well. She'd outlined a straightforward path forward, given the evidence of infidelity. My personal items were already at Mark's apartment. All that remained was the confrontation I couldn't avoid. I prepared Irene's favorite meal, salmon with roasted vegetables, and that expensive Chardonnay she loved. By the time she arrived home, the table was set with candles and flowers, a scene of domestic perfection that would soon shatter. "What's the occasion?" she asked, dropping her keys in the bowl by the door. "Just felt like doing something nice," I replied, pulling out her chair. We ate in relative silence. Her occasional comments about work met with my non-committal responses. Finally, when I could delay no longer, I placed a folder on the table between us. "We need to talk, Irene." Her expression shifted from surprise to wariness. "About what?" "I know about James." The color drained from her face. "I don't know what you're—" "Please," I interrupted, opening the folder. "Let's not add more lies." I laid out the evidence piece by piece, the emails, the hotel receipts, the restaurant charges, the location history. With each item, her expression cycled through shock, denial, and calculation before settling on indignation. You went through my private emails? She deflected, voice rising. That's a complete invasion of privacy. Yes, I admitted calmly. After years of your emotional abuse and public humiliation, I finally trusted my instincts. Abuse, she scoffed. Don't be so dramatic, Kevin. Calling me tiny and inadequate in front of your colleagues isn't abuse. Mocking my career while sleeping with your coworker isn't emotional cruelty. Her strategy shifted instantly. Tears formed in her eyes. The same performance I'd seen her use on clients who were about to walk away. I made a mistake, she whispered. It didn't mean anything. We can work through this. The affair is just one part of why this marriage is over. I explained, maintaining my composure. Even without it, I wouldn't stay with someone who treats me with such contempt. She reached across the table for my hand. I pulled back. You don't understand, she pleaded. I've been under so much pressure at work. James was just there. For 7 months. I said quietly, that's not a mistake, Irene. That's a choice you made every day. Her tears vanished instantly, replaced by cold fury. Fine. You want the truth. Yes, I've been unhappy. What did you expect? You never satisfied me. Not financially, not emotionally, not physically. I nodded, almost relieved to finally hear her honest thoughts. That's exactly why I'm leaving. I deserve better than someone who sees me that way. You? She scoffed, gesturing dismissively. Better than me? Good luck finding anyone who will put up with your limitations. In that moment, looking at her beautiful face twisted with cruelty, I felt a strange sense of peace. This woman had never loved me. She'd only loved controlling me. The divorce papers will be ready tomorrow, I said, standing. I won't be coming back. You can't just leave, Irene said, following me to the door. Her voice oscillated between anger and panic. We need to talk about this. We just did, I replied, picking up the small duffel bag I'd left by the entrance that morning. You made your feelings quite clear. Where are you even going? She demanded, arms crossed defensively. That's no longer your concern. As I walked toward my car, she followed me onto the porch, her controlled facade crumbling with each step. This is insane, Kevin. You're throwing away 9 years over one mistake. I turned to face her, keys in hand. This wasn't one mistake. This was years of belittling me, followed by months of betrayal. I'll go to therapy, she shouted, desperation creeping in. I'll end things with James. I'll do whatever you want. For a moment, I hesitated. 9 years was a long time to walk away from. But then my phone chimed with a text from James, sent to both of us. Is everything okay? You're not answering my calls. Irene's face contorted with fury as she realized I had his number. Her scream echoed down our quiet suburban street as I got into my car. You'll regret this, she yelled. You think anyone else will want you? You're nothing without me. I started the engine, oddly calm despite her rage. Goodbye, Irene. Mark was waiting on his porch when I arrived at his apartment complex 15 minutes later. He took one look at my face and silently helped me carry my bags inside. Want to talk about it? He asked, handing me a beer once we'd settled in his living room. Not yet, I replied, the adrenaline of the confrontation finally wearing off. Maybe tomorrow. Whenever you're ready, man. That night, my phone exploded with notifications. Irene cycled through strategies with alarming speed. 7:42 p.m. I'm sorry. Please come home. We can fix this. 8:15 p.m. You're being childish. This silent treatment is beneath you. 9:03 p.m. I've been calling your friends. No one's seen you. Are you safe? 10:27 p.m. I'll call the police if you don't respond. 11:14 p.m. James meant nothing. You're my husband. Please. Midnight. This is what you always do. Run away instead of fighting for us. I turn off my phone, marveling at how she could rewrite our entire history in just a few hours, casting herself as the victim and me as the villain. The next morning, I met with my lawyer again, finalizing the divorce filing. By noon, the papers were ready. I chose to have them delivered by courier rather than serving them myself. I had no desire to witness more of Irene's performance. In the afternoon, I visited a therapist my lawyer had recommended for people leaving emotionally abusive relationships. Dr. Michaels listened intently as I described the dinner party, the pattern of belittlement, the affair. What you're describing is indeed emotional abuse, she confirmed. And your response, removing yourself from the situation, was actually quite healthy. Then why do I feel guilty? I asked. Because abusers excel at making victims feel responsible for the consequences of the abuser's actions, she explained. That's going to take time to unlearn. I scheduled another appointment for the following week, feeling a small weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in years, I was prioritizing my own well-being. Back at Mark's apartment, I finally turned on my phone to find 37 missed calls and a flurry of increasingly desperate texts. The final one, sent just an hour earlier, simply read, "I got the papers. This isn't over, Kevin." But for me it was. With every hour that passed in my new, Irene-free existence, I felt more certain. It was definitely over. The week following my departure unfolded like a psychological thriller. Irene's tactics evolved from desperate pleas to calculated attacks with alarming speed. Day 1. She showed up at my office, tearfully telling my colleagues she was worried about my mental health. Security eventually escorted her out. Day 2. She contacted my parents, spinning a tale about how I'd abandoned her without warning after one small argument. My mother called, concerned, until I explained the truth, including the affair. Her response, "I never liked that woman," made me laugh for the first time in days. Day 3. Flowers arrived at Mark's apartment with a card reading, "I miss us. Please come home." The fact that she tracked down my location was more disturbing than romantic. Day 4. She enlisted her sister to talk sense into me. Jenny showed up at my office, demanding I give Irene another chance. When I showed her the evidence of the affair, her righteous indignation deflated. "I had no idea," Jenny admitted. "She told me you were having a midlife crisis." "I'm 38, I pointed out. "She's always been good at twisting things," Jenny said quietly. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry." Day 5. The gloves came off. Irene drained our joint checking account, a move my lawyer had anticipated, thankfully. I'd already moved my direct deposits to my new account. Still, it signaled an escalation I hadn't expected. That evening, she emailed photos of us from happier times with the subject line, "Is this really what you want to throw away?" The answer, increasingly, was yes. Day 6. I returned to our house with a police escort to collect more personal items. Irene was waiting, makeup perfect, eyes red-rimmed from what appeared to be strategic crying. "You brought the police?" she hissed as I entered. "Just being cautious," I replied, moving past her to the bedroom. She followed, watching as I collected family photos, important documents, and sentimental items. "What about our plans?" she asked, her voice softer now. "The vacation to Italy? The family we talked about starting? Those were dreams you never intended to fulfill," I said, closing my suitcase. "You can't betray someone for months and expect them to trust your promises for the future." Her expression hardened. "The house is still half yours," she said. "You're responsible for the mortgage. Sell it," I suggested. "The lawyer will handle the division." "I can't afford it alone," she admitted, a rare moment of vulnerability. "That's not my problem anymore." 1 month after leaving Irene, the divorce proceedings were moving forward with surprising efficiency. Her initial attempts to delay and complicate matters faded when her lawyer, seeing the evidence of infidelity, advised her to settle quickly. I found a small but modern apartment downtown, closer to my office. The rent was reasonable, and more importantly, it was mine alone, a space untainted by Irene's criticism or control. My first weekend of true freedom, I stood in the empty living room, surrounded by boxes, and felt something unexpected, possibility. No one would mock my decorating choices or criticize my furniture arrangement. The blank walls could display whatever I wanted. I started small, buying a comfortable couch Irene would have hated for being too masculine. I hung my grandfather's fishing prints that she'd banished to the garage. I set up a corner for the guitar I'd abandoned years ago. At work, I threw myself into a major project I'd been hesitant to lead while with Irene. Without her voice in my head telling me I wasn't capable enough, I excelled. My team responded to my newfound confidence, and 3 weeks in, my boss pulled me aside. "Whatever's changed in your life, it's working for you," he said. "I'm recommending you for the senior manager position opening next month." Therapy was helping too. Dr. Michaels guided me through recognizing patterns of abuse I'd normalized, teaching me to value my own perceptions again. The most common question I hear from people leaving emotional abusers is, "Why did I stay so long?" she told me. The answer is that abuse rarely starts dramatically. It's incremental, like the frog in slowly heating water. My friendship with Mark deepened during those weeks. One evening over beers, he confessed something. "I never liked Irene," he admitted. "The way she talked to you, it wasn't right. But you seemed happy, so I kept my mouth shut." I wasn't happy, I realized aloud. I was just committed to the idea that I should be. Irene continued her campaign of manipulation, though her tactics grew increasingly desperate. She sent mutual friends to check on me, switched between threats and love bombing, and once left a handwritten letter detailing all the ways I'd misunderstood her actions. None of it worked. Each day of freedom strengthened my resolve. Each small decision, made for myself, rebuilt my confidence. The divorce would take months to finalize, but I'd already achieved something more important: independence. The man who had silently served dessert while being humiliated was gone, replaced by someone who understood his own worth. One night, setting up my new record player, another purchase Irene would have mocked, I realized I was smiling for no particular reason. It wasn't happiness exactly, not yet, but it was something equally valuable: peace. 3 months after leaving Irene, I received the promotion at work. The senior management position came with a substantial raise, increased responsibilities, and a new confidence I was still getting used to. My colleagues noted the change, commenting on my more assertive presentations and innovative project approaches. "Whatever you're doing differently, keep it up," my director said after I successfully landed a major client we'd been pursuing for years. What I was doing differently was simple: existing without constant criticism. Dating wasn't initially on my agenda, but when Lisa from the marketing department suggested coffee after a project meeting, I surprised myself by accepting. Our coffee date turned into dinner, then weekend hikes, then more. She was intelligent, direct, and genuinely kind. Most importantly, she listened when I spoke and valued my opinions, something that still felt novel. The first time we were intimate, I braced myself for disappointment or comparison. Instead, she was present, communicative, and afterward, she held me close and whispered, "That was perfect." 3 simple words that healed wounds I hadn't realized were still open. 5 months into my new life, the day I'd privately dreaded arrived. My friend Jack was celebrating his promotion at Costello's, an upscale restaurant popular with the professional crowd. I knew there was a high probability of seeing Irene there. I arrived with Lisa, feeling confident in my tailored suit and the life I'd rebuilt. An hour into the evening, as we laughed with Jack's other guests, I felt a familiar presence. Irene stood across the room, staring at us. She looked thinner, her outfit more carefully selected than usual, as if trying to project an image of perfection. Our eyes met briefly. I nodded politely and returned to my conversation without missing a beat. Later, as Lisa and I danced, Irene approached, wine glass in hand. "You look, well," she said, her voice tight. "Thank you. So do you," I replied simply. An awkward silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken history. "I heard about your promotion," she offered finally. "Congratulations." "Thank you." She glanced at Lisa, who had stepped away for drinks. "She seems nice." "She is," I confirmed. "Very." Irene seemed to be waiting for something. Questions about her life, perhaps, or some indication that I missed her. I offered neither. "Well," she said finally, "I should get back to my table." As she walked away, I realized something profound. I felt nothing. No anger, no hurt, no regret. Just peaceful indifference. 1 year to the day after that fateful dinner party, my divorce from Irene was finalized. The legal process had been surprisingly straightforward once her attempts at manipulation failed. We sold the house, divided the assets, and went our separate ways without the dramatic courtroom showdown she'd threatened. Lisa and I had been dating for 8 months by then. Our relationship evolved naturally, built on mutual respect and genuine appreciation. When I shared the full story of my marriage, she listened without judgment, then said something I'll never forget. "Thank you for trusting me with your past. Now let's focus on our future." With my new salary and my portion of the house sale, I purchased a modern condo overlooking the city park. Lisa helped me decorate, never imposing her preferences but encouraging my choices. "It's your space," she insisted. It should reflect who you are. My guitar playing improved steadily. I'd even joined a weekend amateur band with some colleagues. The first time Lisa came to watch us play a local pub, her genuine pride in my modest skills washed away years of Irene's dismissive comments. At work, I led my team to our most successful quarter on record. My boss mentioned future director possibilities, opportunities one now felt confident pursuing. My weekly therapy sessions became monthly check-ins, then graduation. You've done the work, Dr. Michaels told me. You recognize the warning signs now. Trust yourself. On the anniversary of my departure, Lisa suggested celebrating what she called my Freedom Day. We reserve a table at Vespucci's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. By coincidence, or perhaps fate's sense of symmetry, Irene was there with a group of colleagues. As our eyes met across the restaurant, I felt nothing but a calm acknowledgement of a chapter closed. She looked away first, turning to the man beside her with a laugh that seemed forced even from a distance. Lisa squeezed my hand. You okay? Perfect, I replied, meaning it. Later, as we shared dessert, I realized the true measure of my healing. I no longer defined myself in opposition to Irene or her treatment of me. The angry, hurt man who had fled our home had evolved into someone stronger, wiser, and genuinely content. What are you thinking about? Lisa asked, noting my reflective mood. I smiled, raising my glass to toast the woman who saw me clearly and valued what she saw. Just grateful for second chances. The tiny man Irene had mocked had found his full stature, not in inches or outward appearances, but in the quiet dignity of a life authentically lived.